folks, it is 1 o'clock here. Thank you for joining us today. And as you continue to come on in, take a look at the chat. We're going to have a lively chat throughout. We do want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions. We want to hear your comments. We have some experts with us today, and I'm so pleased to be able to introduce them. This is Remedies for Common Communication Issues. And our special guest today is Darrin Barney, CEO of Elite Worldwide. Darrin, tell us a little about yourself.
Thanks, Craig. I'm Darrin Barney. I actually live in Grand Junction, Colorado. I own a shop there called Barney Brothers Off-Road and Repair. We lift and modify Jeeps, and other vehicles too, not just Jeeps. We do trucks, we do superchargers. Heck, sometimes we even lift Subarus. It depends on what needs to be done. But still own that shop in Grand Junction, Colorado, with my brother and my wife and a few other awesome employees we've got there. And then I actually bought Elite Worldwide back in January of last year. 2023, and so now do coaching, consulting, training, and peer groups and all kinds of fun stuff. So yeah,
Brilliant.
been involved in customer experience stuff and all that for goodness. I'd say the major part of my life. Started back years ago, just taking care of people. Really enjoy it. So it was an honor to be here and be able to talk about this today, Craig.
Oh,
so yeah,
absolutely. It's an honor to have you here. And this has been a kind of a long time coming. So many mutual clients between Autoflow and Elite that this was just a matter of time. And I'm glad we could put this on today. And who helped us to do this is Hannah. Hannah, thank you so much for putting us into contact. Thank you for making sure that this was able to happen. She's going to be here moderating for us and giving her expert opinion as well along the way. Hannah, give us a brief bit on your background again.
Well, I am thrilled, Craig, that we were able to pull this webinar together and invite all of our friends to join us and talk about customer experience. As you know, I am a shop owner in Houston with my husband, Kurt, like you mentioned. I've been in the automotive industry well over 10 years, going toward 15 now. Love it. I love customer service and interactions, and am excited to see how we can continue to raise the automotive industry to the next level to serve our customers well and serve our staff well. And so this communication topic is always important. And so we felt it was important to attack it again.
That's great. No, we appreciate that so much. And Darrin, I didn't know about your Jeep background too. One of our guys is going to be wanting to talk your ear off at Vision. Jordan White, one of our sales guys, all into the Jeep world, man.
Well, we can definitely have good conversations.
Yeah, you're going to have a good time talking with him. Great. All right, everyone, let's dive into some of the fun here. One of the things we always begin with in our webinars is we have the poll results. And I thank you, everyone, for giving us the feedback. This is always insightful, and I appreciate the honesty out of several of you as well. We asked an interesting question, I feel like, this time. How skilled is your team at building rapport? We have a panel today that has some great insights in how to build rapport very well. And I see a good slice of the pie has room for improvement on this. And I'm not surprised either to see so many excellent and good feedback. Autoflow, our clientele are great. And I know the Elite clientele are also bar none. We're talking some of the best shops in the country, in my opinion. And I think that for me, and Darrin, tell me what you think, doesn't surprise me, even with the best shops that we're talking to, that there are issues in this department.
Of course. I don't care how good you think you are, there's always room for improvement. We're dealing with human beings. And so try as hard as you want to have that perfect experience and everything else. But once again, we got humans involved. So that's why it's a constant work in progress. Yeah.
And turnover as a component of all this too. You could have the great team on one day and then things happen, people move on, different ambitions, and they go on and on. Hannah, you were working the counter at your shop, and it was probably a challenge finding someone who could be as excellent in building rapport, right?
It was, but we were really excited to find someone, and then we trained them up just like any good business owner does. We've put investment of ourselves and other training companies, including Elite, into coaching our service advisor to be phenomenal with customers and with our staff.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So this is where it gets really interesting, is we also asked some more feedback, and I haven't done a ton of these short answer responses in our registration form because this can be difficult to present on. Once you get a myriad of feedback that isn't funneled into something I can make a nice pie chart out of, it gets a little tough. But hey, ChatGPT helped me organize some of this stuff into the common phrases and build out the percentages there. This is qualitative data in some regards, but 40% of the responses put their customer clientele into this category, very appreciative and very positive. It wasn't what I expected necessarily in terms of the opinion, I kind of thought some other directions personally, but 40% of them are saying this, calm and cool. By the time of the day they hand you the keys, there's some, key droppers, I like to call them, those
Yeah.
clients. That's always nice. But
Well,
then
that goes along with that previous results that you were talking about earlier, though, because if they got appreciative and positive clients, that means that the customer experience has been good.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. I like
yeah.
these other words, upbeat but nervous.
It's a good one.
It
Yeah.
is. Yeah, they're happy, but they aren't quite sure. So,
Right.
and spontaneous and very pleasant. The spontaneous piece is something that struck me on that one too. Is why we wanted to put that one in here. Pretty cool. And then we go into another area, and this one is kind of what I expected or hoped for a little bit more, but it was only 15%.
That is the goal, right?
Yeah, kind of the
Comfortable and
comfortable.
relaxed.
Yeah. Now all the positive elements, appreciative and positive, is all great. I love that vibe too. But there's an element to this I also really liked. The happy, thankful that they found a professional independent shop. What a great view of your clientele. Mostly very pleasant, looking for ways to eliminate potential problems at the front end. That's really interesting. If you have clients that are already trying to help you,
Good thing.
it is a good thing. No, yeah, relaxed and trusting. Good stuff on that. Good stuff. 15% of recipients are the feedback we received. Then we got into another area, which I expected a bit more of too, which is diverse client spectrums. These shops demonstrated that, all right, yeah, you could have one and then another. And that's where I experienced most of my challenges in the business as well. Pretty standard. I
Of
feel
course.
like it's pretty standard.
I agree with you 100%.
Customers usually nice and understanding, occasionally apprehensive. Person wanting to make sure everything is done right. The persnickety ones that are really inquisitive, we've all had those. But that back and forth, like when you're dealing with one that's immediately trusting in the key dropper, and then you have one of these, it's kind of a whiplash effect on a service advisor. I think it's a difficult thing to rebound from. And I think that a lot of times, if you started treating the one customer the way that the key dropper was, and then you have this guy come in, well, that matter of fact way of going about it with the one guy doesn't play into this.
You really have to adjust to each client that you deal with, each customer that comes through the door. You've got to treat them like a new person. You got to
Yeah.
let go of the stuff in the past that just happened. I don't care if
Yep.
somebody was yelling and screaming at you, right? You got to let go of it. So,
Yeah,
which is hard to do. We're human beings, but we got to.
it is. And this one is another one. I expected more out of this category because I feel like if you go online and you look at any of the web forums, we've all been there. And like, it doesn't matter which shop owner forum this week is the most popular one. Challenging clients seem to dominate the discussions. It isn't a squeaky wheels, and I don't know what it is. We always fixate on the negatives, and so do some of our clients. And if we start focusing on this, I feel like, wow, when this feedback came in, 15% of the feedback had things along these lines, right? Defensive, old school clients, negative and defensive, demanding, they need it right now, always in that reply. I thought, oh my gosh, that's a shop under a lot of pressure with some demanding people. But ambivalent was a great word as well that came out. Usually nice and understanding, but it was still a challenge if their ambivalence is a component to this.
I'm glad to see it's a lower percentage number.
Yes.
Because what we interact with and see in the day-to-day in our shop owner forums could lead us to believe that it's a higher incidence, but it really is the squeaky wheel syndrome if we're looking at the number of people who responded that they were having negative experiences with their clients.
Mm-hmm. Guarded and concerned about time frame and getting their vehicle back. Ooh, are we doing things to generate this kind of atmosphere? I think we are. I think we absolutely are. And so this is just some of the foundational elements, folks, of why we wanted to have this discussion. When we look at all these together, this is a wide and varied feedback. We all have experienced every single element of this. It's probably not surprising to see some of these responses. And I bet as we went through each page here, you probably felt like, oh yeah, I've had that kind. I've had that guy. I've had that guy. Shoot, I was training a service advisor just a few weeks ago, guys, and I asked him how long he's been doing this, and it's only been a couple of months. And I asked him, well, that's about long enough to have met every personality type in the business, isn't it? just 2 months.
Oh, yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
Probably. Seems
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, no, really, this is one of those career fields where when you're confronted with this stuff, it's going to stretch you and challenge you. I think it's true of every service. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Once you're dealing with the general public, it's game on all the time for these things. So here's where we're going to move to, and this is going to dominate our discussion today. We're going to just isolate 3 of the most common reasons why that sort of feedback happens, at least in the negative context in particular, and how some of the more positive elements come into reality. Even though some of the people might be coming in feeling one way, we know that it is possible to get them to come out of that. So issue number 1, lack of active listening. Now, Darrin, you spend a lot of time working with service advisors, and you too, Hannah,
Yeah.
and I imagine the lack of listening is probably, am I right to put it at the top of this list of concerns?
Of course. I mean, it's something that you want that client, they come into you with that high anxiety, right? They don't want to be calling you. They don't want to be in your shop. I mean, they're freaking out. They don't know how much all this is going to cost. And if they've got an advisor that right off the bat isn't listening to them, is distracted, it really sets that whole tone for the rest of that experience to be bad. It's something that we really have to start on that high note of really paying attention, listening, and doing everything the best we can, let them know that they're feeling hurt. So yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I had an instance where I brought my own car into a shop, and I very clearly laid out what is an exhaust leak on a Y pipe that has a couple catalytic converters. And I said, I am not interested in pulling that Y pipe off and replacing any cats. I know it's leaking at this flex pipe. If you got to sublet it to someone who can weld it, just let me know. Next thing they did, they estimated a whole Y pipe assembly. I was like,
Of course it did. And how'd that go for the rest of your experience, you know?
oh, it was frustrating, actually, because I was out of the country trying to communicate things too, and then my wife had to get involved, and it was frustration, is what I felt. Even though they're well-intentioned, wonderful people that will end up doing a good job, I was still frustrated in the extra effort that I had to put into communication, even though it was laid out in front of that. And
Of course.
yeah, super aggravating. But that's where we go sometimes with our minds. We try to too quickly start to go into our default recommendations on things.
Well, as we all know, I mean, half the time you cannot diagnose over the phone. I don't care how good you think you are, you can't. You know, you come into my shop and you got death wobble, I can guarantee it's one of 2 things, right? But the time that I guess that over the phone is the time that the customer goes, replaces that part, and it doesn't fix it. And he's back and he's mad at us because it didn't fix the problem, even though we didn't do any of the work. You know, so it's like we can never assume that we know what the problem is, ever.
No.
Until we get the people in.
You know, one other piece on this too, and Hannah, you tell me if I'm right on this. I feel like that missing information piece, wrong main concern, extremely aggravating internally for the shop as well, and can create some issues between service advisors and their technicians. I know you were skilled at getting this information, and you know what the instance looked like. Kurt's a master diagnostician himself. What's he going to do if he doesn't have the details? Who's the first person he has to go track down?
He's going to come back to me and say, I need to know these things. First, why didn't you ask it in the first place? And can you please call them and get these details, ask these questions, because that's what I need to go through my testing process. Yep.
I've been that service advisor too. That's like, oh man, I'm gonna have to call them back. I know they told me, but I didn't write it down good enough. Now I
Yes.
have to betray that.
Yeah.
Terribly frustrating. So, all right, we have a listening issue. And as some of us that have heard me and Chris talk on Toastmasters here, one of the things that Toastmasters clubs are about, some of you are familiar with Toastmasters, it's a public speaking club, right? But every time we talk about Toastmasters, we always identify, hey, people are coming into Toastmasters to learn how to speak better. But the actual first thing you learn how to do is listen better. And that's where we need to go. So what do we do? What do we do? Darrin, strategies to snap an advisor out of this. What's your method going to be if I've got a distracted advisor and I need you to talk to him?
Well, first off, I mean, we've got to remember that I just talked about this a minute ago. This is huge. You got to remember that anxiety is way up here. You know, I mean, they're in fight or flight. They're immediately flared up. They're freaking out. They don't know what's going on, what's going to happen next. And if we do not lower that anxiety down and really let them know that they're in good hands, you've got a battle ahead of you. It's a big deal, right? So the easiest way to do this is we obviously want to give them our full attention. And if that means that, you've got literally a car just fell off the hoist and you're picking up the phone to answer it. And you see this car hanging out there. You got to put them back on hold really quick until you get yourself back together. I know we don't ever want to put people on hold, but you've got to be able to give them 100% of your attention. You have to, because if they know that you're distracted, once again, that anxiety is up here. Did I call the right place? Even if I've been to you before, am I dealing with the same advisor? What am I doing to really, am I in the right place? And if you don't help to lower that anxiety down by giving them 100% of your attention, they can feel that. They know.
Yeah, you said something interesting there. Put them on hold. That's like the fear that we have is we don't want to do that. That's the bad spot.
It's
But
horrible.
if you're saying it's actually not the worst spot.
Well, but can you imagine, once again, if you call me right now and I'm on the phone and I'm watching and a vehicle is literally, or something major happened, whatever it happens in life, right? And you're distracted and you call me and Craig's like wanting my attention and I'm like thinking about what I got to call this customer. Your brain's distracted. Craig's telling me about what's going on. My brain's trying to deal with, once again, fight or flight. And I'm going, what am I going to do here? Or Craig's going, hey, I'm broke down on the side of the road. I've got my kids. There's 4 kids in the car here. Did I call the right shop? What can I do to get this help? And I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, whatever else is going on, that Craig's not getting 100% of my attention. So, I mean, listening to that customer is huge, and really, literally put them on hold for just a second, figure out what we're doing, come back. It's like, hey, I'm so sorry. I'm back with you here. I just had some stuff I had to deal with. What can I do for you? And then once again, go full force, give them 100% of your attention. I never want to tell anybody to put somebody on hold, but we've all had that time happen where otherwise the customer suffers. So long-winded comment, but I mean, it's really important to give them 100%.
Absolutely. And we talked about this piece before too, the paraphrasing, the repeating back what people are telling you. I've learned this very slowly. Our CEO, Chris, he's in our audience here today. He repeats himself.
Right.
Strategically many times. And he'll repeat himself strategically many times. He'll repeat himself strategically many times. And by the time it's been repeated, like this is like, there's an element to people's ability to pay attention and listen. That's great. And you don't have to do it like that with your clients, but when you repeat back to them or paraphrase what they told you and communicate what they just said, it's amazing what that does for the conversation to prove to them what you just described, that you really are fully focused on them.
Of course. And how do you think that customer feels when you repeat their wording and then they come in to drop the vehicle off and you're like, okay, so you're bringing in because of whatever the specific phrase they use. They know now that you were listening to them 100%. That anxiety goes even down lower because they know that you were listening to them. So paraphrasing is huge. We call it parroting too, being able like a parrot does. I mean, it's so important to repeat those words back because I can't tell you the times where I've actually said a word to them that the customer said. The customer's like, well, no, that isn't right. Actually, it's not really a squeak. It's more of a squonky noise. It's like, what does squonky mean? But it's like, well, yeah, it's more of a squonky noise. I mean, it's more of a hollow sound. And it's like, oh, okay. Oh, you say so it's more of a hollow sound. Okay. All of a sudden it gets more data, more information for us to be able to really help them to know that we're listening and get more information.
I always ask the client to make the sound for me.
Right.
There you
go. Yeah.
Some of them were game and it was hilarious.
She could only make it in this certain corner that was like 40 minutes from the shop. And so she literally, I never saw it in my head. I could just see her holding her phone out the window and driving. She brought it in and she played it for us. And she was like, this is the noise.
Oh,
like, okay.
wow.
And I could just imagine her, little old lady, and she's holding her phone out the phone driving, trying to get that noise to duplicate. But it's important that, once again, that we can duplicate whatever it is they're wanting us to fix.
Yeah. And this is an awkward area. When I've talked with advisors learning this skill, or even in a speaking environment where you're giving feedback on anything, parroting back, something feels awkward for the person parroting it back. And what people forget, and I think it was one of the Dale Carnegie books I was reading that, the people on the receiving side of it don't feel it's awkward.
Nope. And you'll get used to it. Once you start doing it, you'll never think twice about it again. At first, it's hard, but even using when you're dealing with one of your kids, you're dealing with a spouse, whatever, and they say something a certain way and you repeat it back to them. So when you say that, it's this, would you mind explaining that more to me? It's like it feels bad to you at first, but then once you get used to it, I don't even think about it again because I just want to make sure they understand that I'm listening, make sure that I understand.
No,
you feel heard. You feel heard.
Yeah.
You feel heard when you hear the specific words come back to you. Another thing that I recall from one of the roles that I've done is listening to hundreds, probably thousands of inbound phone calls to shops. in a quality assurance role that I had. And I would hear the customer immediately start saying, because when they're calling in, they have on their mind what they need to say. They would say their make, their model, their concern. And oftentimes I would hear whoever answered the phone, likely the advisor, go through the whole conversation. And then when it was time to gather information, they'd say, now, what was that make and model again? Now, what was wrong with your vehicle? And for me, auditing those calls, I'd say, no, you could have written it down if you were actively listening to hear in the very beginning how professional, or how much more professional do you sound, and how much more heard and appreciative does the caller feel when they say, when they realize that the listener heard what they said when they first said it.
Yeah.
It's a behavior that has to be intentional from the moment you pick up the phone.
And we've experienced it the other direction when we're ordering parts, at least back in the day when we picked up the phone more often to order parts than we do today. But I remember the technicians, I told them the year, make, model, and what do they ask me again? 2 seconds later, they asked me the year, make, model all over again. It's like, oh, but the good ones won't.
Right.
The ones wrote it down.
Well, they've learned behaviors that either process it in their mind right away, or they've learned a behavior or implemented a behavior where they're prepared as soon as they pick up the phone with their pen and their listening ears to say, I know they're probably going to say year, make, model, concern, where they're at. You can gain so much from what they're saying right when you answer the call.
So
cool. All right. We got a lot more slides to go through, don't we?
We do. We do. This is a good one, man. And there's some more of this that we're going to come in, but I think you're right, Darrin. So here's the next one. Too much technical jargon. This is an area where I struggled. I talked to you guys beforehand a little bit when 18, 19-year-old Craig was working the front counter at the shop. Baby-faced Craig, no goatee yet, nothing. Looked like a kid. Had to prove myself by explaining how much I knew about things. And I felt in my youth that was an effective way to gain credibility with clients. Right. Turns out not so.
Well, over talking is confusing, you know, and when you over talk, what happens is people's brains go, what? You know, and when you do that to a customer, oh my goodness, we're always talking about this, confused people don't buy. And especially we see this with guys that are technicians that have moved up to the front counter. And it's awesome because, you know, they have all this great background. They know everything, why it works. They can tell you the torque specs on this. They can tell you why they have to do everything. But yet that customer, average customer, does not care. They don't want to know that you got to get the torch out and heat up the wheel bearings on your 2007 Dodge Ram to get the bolts out because they're rusted in there, you know, and you got to get a torch out to heat the bolts up to get it out. They don't care. They don't want to know that, you know? I mean, all they want to know is that they're going to get their vehicle fixed with good quality parts and get it back and have it be reliable so they can go pick up their vehicle or pick up their kids or whatever it is they need to do.
Yeah. You know? No, I've noticed over the years, and this affected me too. It took me a long time to get out of this, but it reduces your ability to sell.
It does.
When you have an overwhelmed client, folks, this is one of the big ones that can really hurt you. And if you try to communicate to a very technical oriented advisor, the former technician type is the key one for this, that this isn't the critical piece. Well, they argue with you a lot. And I see some technicians say, well, why do we even need service advisors when I can answer all the questions they have? I know more about that product than they do. It's like, whoa, that's why you need an advisor.
Yep.
Break it down. So how do we do this? The cures for this one's pretty straightforward. I think that this is an important area to not overlook though. And there are guys that don't realize they're in this. So we're going to have to bring it down to the layman's level.
And that's, you know, something, Craig, that is so important that I love telling the story about going to the dentist, right? And do you really want the dentist to go, hey, Casey, you got this toothache and you got, you know, whatever you got going on. So when you come into me, I'm going to get this needle that's this long. I'm going to stick it down in your gum and I'm going to squeeze it, pump you full of Novocaine, all this other medicine. And then I'm going to grab these pliers and I'm going to rip that tooth out of there and you're going to hemorrhage and you're going to bleed. And there's a good possibility you're going to have, you know, dry socket, all these other things, but we'll stuff some gauze on there. We'll clean out really well, but you know, you're going to be in a lot of pain, but you know, it's okay. You'll be fine before you know, you know, right? Or do you want to go to the dentist that goes, man, I know you got some pain here. The good thing is, you know, we're gonna put a local anesthesia in. We're gonna take care of some things. We're gonna remove that tooth out of there. You'll have some slight discomfort, but you know, the good thing is we'll get you back to normal before you know it and get you back to life.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing. You're getting the same operation done, but do they need to know the fact that you're going to be grabbing pliers and ripping that tooth out of there and you're going to be hemorrhaging and bleeding? No, You don't need to hear
Yeah.
all that. It's the same thing with a
No.
customer
You're
doing a
literally
heater
describing
core
my
and I've
worst
got
fear.
87 screws that hold that dash together. They don't need to know that. I
No.
know as a technician, you want to tell that and justify the amount of labor there is there. But that customer doesn't need to know that because that plants the seed of doubt in their mind. 87 screws. Holy cow, is this tech going to be able to put all those back together? Oh my goodness. And that's what happens in their brain. The customer goes,
Yes.
oh my goodness, anxiety goes back up,
Yeah.
So
Interestingly, visual aids is a key component that we've discussed on a way to improve this. And I see, and of course, digital inspections, a key thing that our clientele is leveraging with great success to
yes.
help people make informed buying decisions. But I do see many cases where even inside of the DVI, there is too much technical jargon instead of a nice, concise, clear statement of why this matters and what we can do about it. In the same way that you summarize things, I feel like if there's still a pull from a lot of people to go in there and they'll create novels of very cool data for those
I mean,
technical mind.
that's the thing is that we really want to keep it simple. The guy that wants to know more, which is, I mean, what you're talking about in this last point here, is that the guy that wants to know more, give him all you want to give him. If he wants to know about the torque procedure of doing this and what your policy is, and why you do this, why you do that, give him all that information. Of course,
Absolutely.
don't hide anything from him. But the
Yep.
average customer does not care. They don't. They just want to know the car's going to be fixed. They're going to get back to normal life. That's what they're concerned about.
Yeah.
And we
No,
watch advisors lose jobs all the time because they talk themselves out of it.
talk
Well,
themselves out of it. Yes, that's
that's
exactly what happens here. Yep.
I mean, they want to tell that customer all that they know to show themselves as a credible expert. But what happens is that you actually show that you don't know much,
Yes.
I mean, plus it opens up
was-
even more questions. So
I will say that I'm one of those advisors in the past, my young me selling transmission work. I've used this in my courses before too. What I was doing by going over all the technical details of these things, just down the list of parts, what I achieved was not sales. It was capitulation. The customer threw up their hands, just fix the dang thing.
right.
is what they
I don't want to
got.
hear you talk anymore.
No, exactly that.
We
Yeah.
have to learn,
Yeah. Now, Hannah, you were an advisor to some very skilled diagnostic techs. I've had a similar background in my life. What was the way you broke it down for people? Did you go and tell them all about the scope waveform readings and?
No. I said it in Hannah terms, and my approach to Hannah terms is, hey, great news. We have phenomenal techs back there, and their job is to go in and test the system at multiple levels to see what's causing this problem, see what's causing this check engine light to happen, and they'll be able to prove why. And the great news is I'll be able to come back with that information to you, and we'll have a plan to move forward with on how to fix it.
Yep.
Simple, nothing technical.
Wow. But the waveform readings, Hannah, they're so interesting.
They're
Yeah,
great.
what about an oscillation scope? I mean, come on now.
Yeah.
We need to tell them all this stuff that they don't need to know.
No.
And I would make a joke and laugh and say, they're probably using a tool like that. And they'll tell me in a way that I can communicate it back to you.
No, absolutely.
100%, Anna. We're agreeing with you, because we don't need to give them much. And it's something that's really hard when you want to be seen as a credible expert. You want to be the guy that has the answers and the gal that has the answers, but it's okay to not give them those answers unless they ask for them. At that point, if they do ask, then by all means, do what you need to do to get the answers. But yeah, 100%.
I always felt that one of the big things that drives this behavior from an advisor in particular is an ego component. There's always two competing things. Fear and ego is what the motivators are in this case. You don't want to lose face in front of your team. You want to be able to explain things technically. It makes the technicians think you're a good advisor. And then you have to prove yourself to the clientele as well that you're in that position. Like I described earlier for young Craig, this is a really, really important thing to watch out for our young trainees. So folks, I want to draw attention. We're getting some great points from Darrin and Hannah on this piece. I hope this is something that you feel like you can lift off of the shoulders of your newer advisors in particular, that you don't have to be so technical, and it opens up the pool of talent that you actually can attract to your business as well if you aren't the one putting that emphasis on the advisors yourself. And I do see it. And Darrin, you might know some shop owners that also are like, yeah, the advisors don't know what they're talking about, as though it's like the main issue of why you can't find good advisors.
Yeah. I hate to say this, and I mean, I would get challenged on this, but I've been teaching the master's course now for years. And the best advisors are the ones that don't come from any automotive background, because they're the ones that are humble and they're willing to go in and tell the customer, you know what, I don't know, but let me go find out for you. And they put them on hold and they go find out and they come back and they actually tell the customer, rather than the guy that thinks he knows and he bluffs his way through it. And then you get a customer that knows a little bit and he goes, wait a minute here, you said you're going to do what now? And then all of a sudden you got to backpedal. I mean, we've all done that in various times of our lives where we bluff our way through something and then it blows
Yes.
up on us. But in that
Every
service
time.
advisor role, you can't, you know?
Yeah. No, and we have some complex language in our industry too. And I love that
course we
this
do.
last point is probably worth mentioning is encouraging people to ask questions, acknowledge the fact that this is complex stuff. And actually, I love when you have those newer advisors that aren't automotive experts. They actually sympathize with the client
do.
in that context and show that, hey, it's okay. I'm here working in a shop and I
And
also need to get clarification on some of this too. It's not always a detriment. It
no,
needs to be done
it's not.
properly.
It's if as long as it's done properly.
Yeah.
Once again, if you bluff your way through it or you say, well, I don't know, and you don't want to take that effort
Yeah.
to find out,
Yeah.
of course. I mean,
Like, there's a wrong way for this, right, Darren? Because
course
you've
there is.
probably heard,
Yes.
so, and Hannah, I know you spend time listening to phone calls too. If you've got an advisor on the phone and they're asking questions, it's more like, yeah, I don't know. And it's like, oh no, that's a
Yeah.
great question. Let me
Yeah.
get that
Let me
answer
find
for you.
out. No
Yes.
problem at all. Let me go find out really quick. I'll be right back. You know, customers
Always be
understand.
solving the problem.
They do.
Yeah.
They do understand when you admit the fact that you don't know. I don't care how long you've been doing this, you don't know it all. You know,
Yeah.
you just don't. And so to put them on hold and find that answer out for them is wonderful. You come back and say, hey, great news. I got some information. I learned something today.
Yeah.
And they get excited about it too.
Yeah. No smoke screens, anything. That's just
No.
clarity then. Beautiful.
Yeah, good.
So let's go to our third issue here. And this one is, I think, the one that warrants the most time spent because this
Yes.
is where I feel like a lot of people are coming into the shops that are salvageable, not the kind that we need to react to in a negative way, but we can actually redeem this if we're paying attention to why they feel the way they feel. But this is where we see people come in upset and we match that emotion. Or maybe it's us that are all stressed out, busy, exasperated, and maybe we're creating that emotion.
This one is huge, you
Yeah.
know? I mean, really. I mentioned this numerous times on this, but it's enough that it's not just in the automotive industry, it's in every industry. And I tell this story a lot at Masters. A good friend of mine's a plastic surgeon, and he approached me about doing sales training for all of his staff. And I was like, well, what do you want me to teach your sales training to your staff for? And he's like, well, we found that if a customer gets a bad experience at the very beginning when they call in for whatever it is they're doing, and he does everything, right? And that customer calls in and they get a bad experience from that receptionist, they've found that then to the very end, that customer is unhappy. And they found that if they get a good receptionist that treats that customer right from that very first phone call, then everything from there on normally goes smooth. And he's like, and this is, if you knew him, you'd understand what I'm talking about. He's like, he can tell you how many seconds he spends in a chair when he's doing, a breast surgery, whatever it may be. He can tell you all of those things. And he's actually done the data. And he's like, we got it. I really want you to help me with this. I'm like, no problem at all, Matt. We're working on this course to do this. But it's something that they have to get that a good experience from that very beginning. And once again, if you know that customer's anxiety is up here, and so they're just stressed to the max, and you pick up that phone and you're stressed to the max, what happens to them? It goes worse, right?
Yeah,
it does. That anxiety goes up even more.
Yeah.
But if you can pick up that phone and reset, and you're like nice, and you're like, hey, thanks for calling Barney Brothers. This is Darrin. How can I help? All of a sudden, it's like they're like, oh, cool. This guy's here to help me. And then you listen to them and you just match that, trying to bring them down to your energy and get them to where they need to be,
Yeah.
But you get them and they're upset. You got a battle ahead of you, but it's okay. Go on with a smile and kill them with kindness. You've got to get that down. So anyway, sorry.
No, that's a really interesting story. And it's kind of funny, an automotive expert teaching for medical purposes. That doesn't surprise me though. The analogies between our fields are endless.
Right. I mean, they are.
You're talking on solutions to this, and I think that this is a great spot to go to, because people are like, when they come into the shop, like Hannah, is it the best day for someone who's coming into the auto repair shop? Are they in their best spirits?
No, I don't don't think I'd be happy if I woke up and went out to go to work and my tire was flat or my car sounded weird and I was already running late and the kids are upset and it's a whole thing. No, you don't start out wanting to go get your car fixed.
Nope. Nope. And I feel like somehow we just have some people that forget that in our business. And that's why this sort of situation can come into place. I think you need always to be prepared to take someone that's coming in feeling down and bad and restore their positive spirits. And if you take your job seriously as an advisor, I think that you're going to find actually most of your fulfillment is going to come from this, not just the sales. The sales, by the way, will just be able to follow this. But that's where I found like people just thanking me at the end of the day. They came in frustrated and sad, and then they came out overjoyed.
They're happy.
Yeah.
There's a great feeling when they leave and they're actually happy to pay and they're happy about it. And then you do your customer care follow-up and they're like, oh, yeah, it's running great. I just really appreciate you guys. And then they come back and they tell everybody else about how awesome you are. You know, it's amazing what happens, but it's all about building that relationship and taking care of them.
Completely. They come in with this negative emotion. You're going to find out why. And acknowledge the feeling is one of the very first things customer service people should be taught, is that you acknowledge what they're feeling.
Right.
Yes.
Sometimes by parroting back that feeling to them. Right.
I agree.
And a lot of times it's just listening, you know, and just being there for them and just being empathetic, like, just like you have that number one point, you know, I mean, empathetic. I got to tell the story. I mean, I've told this quite a few times, but it's a great story that I had a friend of mine, her name's Katie Davis, and she called me. This was years ago in my shop. She called me. She has a minivan. She's like, hey, I broke down the side of the road and I got my 4 kids. I got to get here. I got to get this, got to get this. And I'm like, no problem at all. Yeah, you know what? Let me, how many car seats do you have? Let me come down and I'll grab my wife's van and I'll come down and I'll pick you up, and no problem at all. We'll get it taken care of. And that was probably 15 years ago. And to this day, she's still a great client because of that time that I went and just took care of her, right? I'm really glad I was in a good mood that day when I answered the phone, because, you know, if I wouldn't have, I mean, literally, I spent this weekend, her daughter went away on their mission and I was over at their house. And I mean, you're talking about a relationship that's been going on like 15 years with them. And how cool is that it started literally from a phone call and just having that, you know, helping them out through a struggle that they were having in their life, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's cool stuff. I mean, it's that empathy and just being nice when you pick up the phone and helping, you know, keeping that, they call it a servant's heart. You know, how can I serve you?
Yes.
You know, and it's like, it's important for an advisor to have that. If you got the guy that answers the phone that's a grouch and a gruff, you really need to think this through, because that's what that client's getting. You work so hard to get that phone to ring. And when they get that grouchiness, man, as a customer, I know when I call places and I feel like I'm not appreciated, it's like, okay, well, I want to find somebody else that wants my money and somebody that wants to take, you know, help me out. So anyway.
Let me ask a question on that, Darrin, because you call a lot of shops too. I call a lot of shops, our own clients too. And sometimes you get an advisor that it's like, oh dear, like if I were just a regular client coming in, I'd be like, did I call the right shop? What's your approach with an owner when you find an advisor like that?
Oh, it's easy. I mean, the best thing to do is get a recording and play it back with the advisor. Yeah. That way they can hear it, you know, and just talk about that tonality and just talk about the things that we talked about, right? Because a lot of times advisors, I know I didn't, when I started in this industry, I never thought about what the advisor was going through or the customer was going through, you know? And the more I did it, the more I realized it's like, wow, if I'm nicer to people and answer that phone, they're a lot more likely to buy from me later on and come and bring their vehicle.
Seems logical.
Yeah. I mean, take care of them, you know? And so the nicer you are to people in the beginning, the nicer the whole experience goes. When you call them to tell them that you're going to spend $4,000 to put, you know, a bunch of work into their car, if they like you, it's not as big of a battle. You don't have to sell it. Most of the time you just have to educate them and let them know why it needs to be done, and they go.
Yeah.
But you have to start on that positive note, you know, starting with a smile when you answer the phone, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like Hannah, like there's days though, and you know this, we've all worked the counter at the shop. There's times where you just finished an awful conversation that was hard, it was stressful, or there's a certain circumstance, and you yourself feel down, and that phone rings again. How do you reboot from that?
Well, something I have done for many years, and we now teach it at Elite, is to have a mirror in front of me. It's something I learned back at Dell Computers when I was working in their call center. And we all had mirrors, and we had to look at the mirror and smile before answering the phone. And It's not just seeing that smile and reminding ourselves to do it, but you're looking yourself in the eye and centering again and going, okay, this is a new interaction. Let's do this.
That is a fantastic piece of advice. Probably the easiest thing to implement too.
It's so easy. It's a centering habit. It's something that tricks your brain or acknowledges in your brain that it's time to do something new.
I love it. That's going to become a new recommendation here. That is great. No, I've never heard that before. And you learned that outside the industry, no doubt.
I learned it in college when I worked for Dell Computers. But again, it was customer service and sales, and you have to build rapport quickly because you're on an incoming phone call, somebody calling in to purchase a computer. And so you had to build rapport quickly with somebody who didn't know you, didn't know how to trust you, certainly didn't like you because they didn't know you. And so you had to start with the strongest rapport building skills you could from moment one.
That's great. That's really, really great.
Yeah.
Now, the other side of this coin, like airlines, I always get to have these airport experiences these days too. And I'll never forget one instance, short connection. It was all a messed up itinerary. I'm running through the airport, get to the gate. It's not what I expected. I'm out of breath. I'm in a positive attitude, but I'm out of breath and I'm just huffing and puffing. It's like, I need some help. And the lady, first thing she said to me was, "Sir, you need to calm down." It's like, I turned around and I went to the other counter right opposite the aisle there. It's like, I'm chuckling as I'm doing this. It's like, I wasn't even mad. It was so funny. But like, sometimes you're going to run into some people like this. And I think that's like weirdest behavior that you could get out of a customer service rep is the first thing they want to get the customer to do is just calm down. Like, you're talking to me now, you got to get on my level. Strange attitude. That's why the empathy piece is on number one here.
Yep.
You
got to check your emotions, you know.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going on in their world. You have no idea. And you got to just check your emotions and let it go.
Yeah. When in the history of calm down has calm down ever been a constructive comment to someone? Yes.
I just started laughing because every relationship and business interaction I know, if you tell me to calm down, I'm not going to be happy either. I'm going to move on to another conversation.
Yeah. No, it's over. It is over. But we've had these experiences before. And I'm sensitive now to the type of customer service I get when I go to other businesses teaching customer service as we do. You just, it's kind of fun. We had this experience the other day. I was telling you guys a little bit beforehand as we started up this webinar. I was at dinner the other night, had a new server in one of our favorite restaurants, and she was just kind of not great. It was really kind of down. And my daughter even said, "Our server seems depressed." Yeah, she does, honey, doesn't she? We're going to be real nice though. And sure enough, by the time we were getting desserts and everything, she was warming up to our table a little bit better and whatnot. But wow, I always think it's like it should never be the client's responsibility to warm up the server. It shouldn't be that way. Happy to do my part in the world, but not when I'm the paying client. It makes a dent on how I'm going to go about the business again.
Right. Very
frustrating to see that. But our advisors sometimes are guilty of the same thing, are they not?
Yep. Of course.
Yeah. No, this is an area where I think we could spend all day talking about scenarios in the shop that relate to this specific piece. But I also want to open things up a little bit to any of the issues that shops are seeing as well. So we have some people in chat that are saying some really interesting things. I've seen Cody Hammer mentioning the concept of unreasonable hospitality. It is a really cool concept which deserves its own conversation as well. But there's some other comments too, like we saw from Dave, is we assume we know why the customer is upset, but we don't know until we ask.
Yes.
Yeah. Brilliant. Very, very common. Joe.
That was huge.
Yeah.
I mean, just asking the question, "Hey, is everything okay? What's going on here?" You know, just asking the question. You seem like you're a little bit upset. Are you okay? Talk to me.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, they're going to tell you exactly what's going on rather than you guessing. You know? So.
We've had a missed appointment advice from one of my friends too. His strategy for reaching out to people who missed their appointment isn't, "Hey, where are you? What is it?" It's like, "Hey, we're just calling to check that everybody's okay." That's the way they start their missed appointment conversation every time. It's like, "Oh, what do you mean?" Oh, I totally forgot. I'm so sorry. It's like, "No, we're fine. Thanks for checking." But it's just so brilliant when you go from that perspective, not like, "How dare you miss an appointment? You owe us money."
It's
Good
really
way to start the conversation, though. Showing your
Yeah.
concern.
Isn't it? I think it's great. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I
Well,
saw, oh, I'm sorry.
no, please. Yeah.
I saw a comment that was leading more to a question from a reader, and it said something along the lines of, oh, we have a front end that is averse to questioning the customer. And we were talking about asking
Yes.
good questions in the beginning to see what is going on with the vehicle. And I where I'm going to take that is the question that I'm hearing from it or reading into it is how to support your advisors or those working on the front end who are uncomfortable with or adverse to questioning the customer.
Yeah. Why aren't they asking questions? How do we get them to ask
Yeah.
more questions?
Yeah. It's a matter of just talking with them and educating them and explaining them. You
Curiosity
have
for
more,
one. Yeah.
all good salespeople are good detectives, and that's the
Yeah.
basics,
Yeah. Be
I would
curious.
think helping them know what questions to ask as well.
There it is. Yeah. Maybe they need a primer. Maybe that's something that
Right.
we have handy, ready for them to go in a situation where they're adverse to it. Sometimes, let's face it, folks, some of us that have been experiencing this for a while now, we have questions that we've developed over a long period of time. And the young people, the biggest reason, and we see it in classes too, you see it in engagement when you're teaching sometimes too, right there. Like the hardest thing as teachers is getting people to ask questions in the class. It's scary, right? And they just don't know what to ask. You almost have to feed them something that they need to go into. Open-ended questions, make it relational. It isn't all about the car.
No.
For us in Michigan, you've heard me say this example several times here, some of our audience. My favorite question, especially as spring comes in, when are you guys going north this year? Everyone here in Michigan loves to go north, and it's just a fantastic place to go once it's warmer. Even some of them who ski go all the time. And I love it when they say, oh man, we were just out last week skiing or whatever it was. And then it's just a wonderful conversation there. And you learn so much about the car. And then you start writing those notes about how they use that car. And then you give advice later about the things your technician finds about that stuff. And now we're advising from a position of care and genuine concern for that individual. It ties it all together. Chris asked a good question here a second ago. He said, when is it the right time to fire a customer?
Good question.
Is there a time where you even say that, like, this is something you should do? Darrin, is that?
Of course there is.
Yeah.
Of course there is. I feel if somebody is threatening one of my people and, or you cross that line of I try really hard to take care of people. If you got someone that won't work with you, and they're not willing to work together, then, there's no set fast rule. Once again, I know if somebody ever threatens any of my people, it's done. I have no problem at all calling and saying, I don't know what's going on here. They told me their side of the story. I'd like to hear yours, but there's no excuse for you to be yelling and cussing and screaming at somebody and threatening them. And all the years I've been in business, I've had that happen a couple times, but other than that, it has to be a very extreme case. I'd much rather keep that customer happy, but there's some people that we all know that you just can't make happy. And that's, something
I say they didn't get your value proposition.
Yes.
Right. Yep. Let them go be a good fit somewhere else, Yeah. So,
yeah. How does that get handled though? If there's a threat, I always felt like it's necessary to call the police too and document that, but it's that's an escalation in its own.
Every situation is different, but
Yeah.
the things that I've dealt with, if it actually happens in person, most of the time I can calm them down and walk them outside and get them calmed down. But if you got somebody that's that belligerent, we call the cops and do whatever needs to happen. I think it's probably happened maybe twice in the entire time that I've owned my shop.
Yeah.
But I have fired other customers, but that belligerent and that upset, there's once again, they may not be a good person on my bus. I'd rather go be a customer somewhere else.
Yeah. No, it's a frustrating thing. And I always try to remind shops that when it happens, you can't take it too personal or look at it as an immediate failure on your team. You're definitely going to investigate where the things broke down. But there's some times where you just have to be able to forgive your people and look out for them.
And that's the thing is that, throughout the years, I've I've let quite a few of them go. Not had to call the cops on them. Like I said, that's
Yeah, right,
once
right.
or twice. But I
We
mean,
agreed it wasn't a good fit.
exactly. You
Yes.
know, I mean, and it's most of the time it's just a matter of you just got to do what you got to do to move forward. You know, you spend hours talking to somebody and trying to work through an issue, and no matter what you do, giving money back, doing all these things above and beyond what you would ever do normally, and the guy's still not happy. Once again, at that point, you know, what else do you do? We got to work together, you know? So
Yeah. There's another question in there about getting extra time approved on diagnostics or repairs. That can be an awkward conversation. I would challenge that. Sometimes that goes back to the original expectation setting.
it does. You just got to call them and talk with that customer. Once again, we set the expectations up front. We
Mhm.
got to be really careful that we never guarantee it's going to fix the problem. We don't know that. You know, in all the years I've been a mechanic and been raised working on vehicles, there's no guarantee. There just isn't. I don't care how good you think you are, how good your techs are. There's never 100% chance you're going to solve it. And I like to always say that, you know, especially on when it comes to testing and diagnostic stuff, you can't guarantee that. You
No.
know, you
Yeah.
can't. And it's
Such a
like, this
tough
is
thing.
we're definitely going to have a lot more answers for you, and we should be a lot closer to this. And, you know, yes, we should be there, but I don't know that yet until, you know, the tech comes up to me and tells me it's fixed. But
Yeah.
I believe in telling them right up front and talking with them through it, especially if it's something that's a weird, evasive problem. You know, you always let them know up
Yes.
front. That way, when you have that second call, hey, you know, I told you I was hoping this wasn't going to happen, but you know what? We are at the end of our first testing package. And so, as we discussed, we are going to have to go to testing package 2. You know, but before we do that, let me go over the results of the stuff of what we found and what the tech has come up with so far and where we are. So they feel that they got value out of that first testing package or that first, you know, a little bit of diagnostics, whatever it is. But you've got to just have that conversation. You know, you have to.
Nice. I love that Robert commented that he had a guy beg to come back.
We have too, Craig. I was thinking that same when I saw that.
So
I mean, that's
funny.
the best feeling to me is when you have, and I've had them happen where they call and they're like, you know what? I'm really sorry. I was off my meds, or I mean, I've heard all kinds of things, you know.
Yeah.
But to me, that's the best reward is when they come
Yeah.
back and they're like a whole different person, and it's like they're actually nice, and it's like
Nice.
this happened to me quite a few times, and you're like, this is the coolest thing, you know.
And that's when you can charge what you want, Robert.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, it's just awesome to have them come back and want to do business with you. It's a great
Yeah.
feeling, you know.
No, yeah.
Robert,
The
I
grass
agree
is
with that. I
greener.
love that. So
Yeah. That's beautiful.
sometimes
those
people need to
scenarios
be
happen.
kind of checked a little bit.
Yes.
You know, I mean, just hey, it's not okay to talk to people like this. We're here to help you. Please let me help you. But you
Yeah.
got to treat me like a human being. Otherwise, our conversation's done. You know,
Yeah.
you got to let's work together on
Yes.
this. I want to see you happy. So,
Yeah. It's amazing that sometimes, and I've had this in school experiences as a child and everything else. Sometimes people you have a conflict with initially turn into some of the best relationships
yes, they
throughout
do.
that time.
Yes,
And
they do.
that if you keep your mind open to that possibility, I think it'll change how you want to look at how you're conducting yourself.
Right.
Now we have, the fear of the Google reviews is very real, isn't it, Dave?
Yes, it is.
Folks, this has been a pleasure talking on this. And the cool thing is you get to hear more about this. Any of you that are going to Vision in Kansas City this week, Darrin, you have a class there.
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom Amaro and I are going to be teaching the ultimate customer experience, which is talking about, you know, the right ways to do everything from answering the call to, you know, even your marketing before getting that customer all the way through the car delivery process and follow up. So really a great course. It's sold out. It actually sold out a month or so ago.
Nice.
But I'm sure that you know, there'll be other opportunities to come to see this one, but come by the booth and see us there too. But
Yeah.
we're
Hannah won't
really
be there
excited
this year,
to be there.
though. Who's going to be there instead?
Yeah, Sarah's going to be there.
Sarah.
Joe
Yes.
Marconi will be there. Tom will be there, and I'll be there. So yeah, Sarah's actually going to SDX. So
Great. Well,
yeah,
we'll see you at
roll back.
SDX again.
So, yeah.
And we'll look forward to seeing Sarah, Joe, and Tom at Vision. Darrin, did you say what time your class was and what day?
I don't have it right here in front of me. Sarah or Hannah, do you have it right there with you?
Yes.
Nice.
It is this coming. Oh, it's not on the paper I was looking at. My
That's okay.
apologies.
No, yeah. Chris and I are teaching on Friday morning.
Cool.
We'll be talking on communication as well. And that's a workshop class. So
Nice.
people that want to practice some communication strategies can definitely come in there, and we're going to have a great time. We did that at ASTE last year. It was a lot of fun. Most fun I've had.
And I have our schedule too, whenever you're ready.
Yeah,
Thanks
go ahead,
for your
Anna.
patience. On Friday, Joe Marconi will be speaking about automotive financial mastery.
Hey,
Navigating
Anna, before you
business
go any
success.
further, I got to share that Joe had made sure that this is not going to be a dry financial mastery class. It's so, because you know how it is with that stuff.
It can be a little bit hard. Is it morning or
It
afternoon?
can.
It is in the afternoon on Friday.
Good. Financial stuff in the morning is a bad idea.
Right? Yeah. And it's awesome. I'm excited for it.
No, Joe,
Yeah,
start
sorry,
him off
Hannah.
with calisthenics. Me and Chris have had to do that before for a financial class.
You have
Right,
to do
I
that,
know.
right?
But be prepared if you did that. Me and Chris had another person come back to one of our other classes and say, hey, Chris, Craig, you guys didn't do the karate before class.
Oh,
Right.
buddy.
So it's like, you got to keep doing it after that.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, guys, I am so looking forward to seeing you very soon here. I wish you safe travels.
Yeah.
Hannah, I saw you put in chat, but how do we reach out if people are more interested in learning about Elite?
About Elite, yes, it is going to our website at www.eliteworldwide.com. And you can go to any of the pages and click contact us or click let's do it. And you'll be able to submit contact form for one of us to reach out to you.
Yep.
Great. Now, we appreciate you guys being here. It was a pleasure introducing you to our audience and having some of your audience get introduced to us. And we appreciate these things so very much. I hope we get to do this again. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Craig.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Craig.
it.
Yeah. No, we'll see you soon. Safe travels, everyone. We'll talk to y'all later.
Thanks.